All right, and our last lecture will be over cellular disorders. And this will wrap up our macromolecule lectures. But this is really important because all of our macromolecules have some sort of function. And we've learned what those proper functions are, but the malfunction or dysfunction of those can also lead to many problems with our bodies, such as disease and disease states. So we're going to look at some of those. Everything that our body does, right? Everything that our bodies do each and every day is because of cells and their various functions. So if some or all of these cells lose their function, bad things can happen. So what are some types of cells that we know about, right? Well, we've talked about the macromolecules, and the macromolecules those four fall into all of the categories of the cells we're going to talk about. So muscle cells would be protein, right? That's where most of the protein goes, is to build muscle. Nerve cells, right? That's another one that would could fall into the nucleic acids that build that, or DNA, RNAs are going to end up building nerves. Epithelial cells, these are your cells of your skin, right? And so that would also fit into connective tissues and lipids and lots of things that are there with your skin. Connective tissue structures, those are ligaments and tendons and things. Those are fibrous protein type structures. Cells of the blood, we talked about glycoproteins. That fits right there for cells of the blood, glycoproteins. Lymphatic cells, these are the cells that sort of drain fluids and liquids away from your body. And so what can go wrong with these, right? Well, cells can lose their function because one of the many parts of the cell starts to work incorrectly, or it just shuts down and it won't work at all. So parts of the cell we need to go over and review, right? Hopefully you've had this in middle school, maybe not, but if not, you're going to have it now, right? So we're going to look at the mitochondria, the lysosomes, the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes called the ER. There are two types, rough ER, smooth ER. There is the Golgi and Golgi bodies, the nucleus, which I think we all know the nucleus is, the ribosomes, and plasma membranes. And there are others, but these are the big ones. These are the ones we want to sort of hone in on and look at. So mitochondria. The mitochondria is the part of the cell that's responsible for energy production. It's very much like the power supply that provides energy to your house. If the mitochondria is defective, your body's not going to function as it should, right? It's not going to function as it should. And I know the word should may have got cut off, but there it is. So the mitochondria is your powerhouse, right? It's like your battery pack or your electrical wall or electrical outlet in your wall, right? So it's very important that it functions as it should so that you feel healthy each and every day. There are 40 different types of mitochondrial disease. Mitochondrial disease is a difficult disorder to identify because it can take many forms and range from mild to severe. The problems it causes can begin at birth, or it may not show up till later in adult life. Just depends on which one it is. It is estimated that mitochondrial disease affects anywhere from 40,000 to 70,000 Americans, occurring 1 in approximately 2,500 to 4,000 births on newborns. And you may want to write these down, but here are some issues associated with mitochondrial cytopathies. Brain development, right? Nerves, weaknesses, muscles, weakness, kidneys, kidney failure, heart disease, heart blocks, cardiomyopathy, liver, hypoglycemia, you got low sugar, liver failure, eyes, you can have visual loss and blindness, ears, hearing loss and deafness, pancreas, you get diabetes or endocrine pancreatic failure, right? So go through all of these. I know there's some words here that you may not recognize or know, but write these down so that if you draw a patient that has one of these issues, right, you can start investigating that, and so you'll know what hypoglycemia is, or what uh, reflux is, or dysmotility, or some of those. So copy all of this down. I know there's a lot there, but just pause it and copy these down so that you have these. We're going to skip that slide. All right. There are no cures for mitochondrial disease. Some helpful treatments include vitamins such as B1, B12, vitamin C, vitamin E, right? CoQ10. A lot of these are helpful and useful supplements. And some researchers are examining using drugs to block lactic acid buildup in the body. That usually happens with mitochondrial disease. Other ones are trying to figure out very low carbohydrate diets to reduce the workload for the mitochondria. Remember, carbohydrates are our body's first line of energy production, right? So if we reduce that, the mitochondria doesn't have to work as hard, and maybe we get energy from more protein in our diet instead of carbs. The next up is lysosomal storage diseases, and lysosomal storage disease are caused by the accumulation of macromolecules such as proteins, polysaccharides, which we've talked about as sugars, lipids, which you should know are fats, and the lysosomes because of some sort of genetic failure. And it's a failure to manufacture an enzyme needed for their breakdown. Neurons or the central nervous system are particularly susceptible to damage. Most of these diseases are caused by inheritance, so it's genetic for the most part. You can have L-cell disease, which is called mucolipidosis 2. It's a rare inherited metabolic disorder. I'll let you read about that, get those down. But basically, the symptoms of this disorder typically become obvious during infancy and may include multiple abnormalities of the skull and face with growth delays. This disorder belongs to a group of diseases known as lysosomal storage disorders, and their lysosomes are particles bound in the cell membranes within the cells that break down certain fats and carbs. So if one of those malfunctions, you could get this L-cell disease. Another one that is common is called Tay-Sachs and Gaucher's disease. Both are caused by failure to produce an enzyme needed to break some things down. You can have something called sphingolipids. Sphingolipids, mucopolysaccharidosis. This is also caused by a failure to synthesize an enzyme to break down proteoglycans, right? Proteoglycans. And you can look that term up if you want to. I encourage you to do that. But again, these are some of the diseases that you might actually get for your patient. Or I might actually give you some symptoms, right? But it just depends. We'll talk more about our project. The project will happen this week. A big one here is sickle cell anemia. It's an inherited blood disease. That means you're born with it, and there's no cure. It lasts a lifetime. So there's no getting rid of it. We can treat it, but you can't get rid of it. But your blood cells are normally round, particularly red blood cells are usually round. Smooth, round, they're kind of like donuts. They can move easily through blood vessels to carry oxygen to all parts of the body. But in sickle cell, the red blood cells become hard, sticky, and they're shaped like crescents, kind of like a crescent moon shape. And when these hard and pointed blood cells go through small blood vessels, they get stuck, and then they block the flow of blood. And that can cause pain, damage, low blood counts, anemia, lots of things. And this actually occurs more in the African American population than anyone else. Not being racist, that's just how it happens, that most of the time the African American population are the ones that are attacked by sickle cell anemia. I've actually had a former student that had it, and before her I had a former parent that had it, and before her I had a former classmate that had it. So I've been around people with this, and it's very painful. A lot of times you'll have to go to get treatment to thin the blood so that it would move through the vein properly, or maybe even pain medication until it clears up. And it is fatal in some cases. It can eventually cause death. So definitely something you want to get checked out. Again, most of the time it's hereditary. So if you've got somebody in your family that has it, chances are someday you may develop it, or you could have developed it as a child. Here you see a picture of your normal cell, the round, kind of donut shaped, and on your right you see the sickle cell, which is kind of like the crescent moon. And so you can see how those would block the blood supply and become painful with those sharp tips and stuff. So that's just not a good thing. But this goes back and talks more about glycoproteins and fits into that category specifically. Again, on your right here, you've got normal blood supply. You can see how they're supposed to be donut shaped, flowing through there. You can see the sickle shape, the deformed red blood cells over here, right? And you can see this is the event, so they all kind of clog this up, and then you get red blood cells that just kind of back up, kind of much like a wreck on the interstate, and you get all these other cars just piling on. And so that creates a lot of swelling and pain and other issues for the patient. Let's see. So cells are very important, and maintenance of those cells is highly important. And when they don't function properly, disease can actually set in and become troublesome for the patient. So we'll talk more about this in class, but these are some examples that we'll go through. You'll get a patient name with a disease labeled. You'll draw it out of a hat, and then there'll be a series of sheets that you'll have to go through, describe their disease, and we're going to trace the lineage of that disease all the way back to the macromolecule that's responsible for its malfunction and responsible for that disease. And then we'll look at symptoms, how to treat it, mortality, which just means is it something that's chronic that they're going to have for the rest of their life, or is it something that's terminal that's going to end their life suddenly, or is it something that can be managed and lived with daily, or something that's treatable and curable. So we'll look at all that as we go through this week, but that takes care of today's lecture. Thank you very much.